So I am trained as a Mesoamerican archaeologist, which is, so I did all my field work and my research in Belize and Guatemala, working on ancient Maya sites, and I've traveled extensively through Mexico, collecting information and data. And so that's what I was trained as. I was trained as a Mesoamerican archaeologist, someone who specialized in Maya and Maya architecture, but I haven't been working as a Mesoamerican archaeologist for a while. So currently, I'm the director of programs at the Archaeological Institute of America, and I teach part-time. So I'm an assistant professor at the Berklee College of Music, where I don't teach music, but I do teach archaeology courses through the art history program at Berklee. Berklee is a liberal arts college, and so the students have to do a variety of courses, including some art history courses. So I do that, and I teach courses on Mesoamerican art and archaeology and just general archaeology courses at Berklee. But my main job, my full-time position, is as the director of programs for the Archaeological Institute of America. The AIA is a nonprofit. We are kind of unique in that we have both professional members and we have a general interested audience of members. And my job as director of programs is to provide services and for both constituencies. So we do things like grants and fellowships, and we have a site preservation program all geared toward our professional members. But then for the general public, we do a lot of outreach and education, and the organization itself has 108 local societies, and so they work with us as well. So it is all about informing, educating, and providing resources for the public and for our professional members. So that's what I do currently. I'm not in the field doing active field work, but I work with a lot of archaeologists, and I feel like I'm kind of their support staff. I do all the things that they need to help them get their work done properly. So that's what I do. So interestingly, I got into archaeology by accident. It wasn't what I'd actually planned on doing. I moved to the US for college. And when I came into college, I was an economics major. But luckily, I went to a liberal arts college. I went to Brandeis University, which is a liberal arts school. And because I was in a liberal arts college, I had to do courses that were outside of my major. And my sophomore year, I took an anthropology course, which I absolutely loved. It was with this great professor, Professor Messick, who talked about Muslim cultures, had done all his fieldwork in Yemen and Morocco. And I was just blown away. I didn't know you could do things like that. I didn't know you could study groups, people, cultures, languages in the way that he had. I didn't know anthropology existed as a possible career choice. So I started taking more anthropology courses, and during that exploration of anthropology, I discovered archaeology. Absolutely fell in love with it, fell in love with the fieldwork aspect of it, the research part of it, the kind of idea that, you know, you go into these places and uncover clues and try to figure out what happened there 1,000 years ago was just fascinating to me. And so that was it. Once I took a few archaeology courses, I realized I was not going to do anything with an economics major, but I was going to try and make an anthropology and archaeology major work. So I kind of fell into it accidentally and then continued with it. So from Brandeis, I went to Boston University, and there at Boston University, I discovered Mesoamerican archaeology. Again, kind of by accident. I had not intended to go to BU for Mesoamerican archaeology, but had an opportunity to go do a field season in Belize, and again, fell in love with the country, the culture, the archaeology, the heat, the humidity, the mosquitoes, everything. It was amazing, and that's what I ended up doing. So I focused on the Mesoamerican region, specifically on the Maya, and specifically on Maya architecture and domestic architecture. I was really interested in how just regular Maya folks lived, the houses they built, and, you know, the things that they had in their homes. That was really what sort of drew me to archaeology and Mesoamerican archaeology. I tell people there are two main reasons why we should care about archaeology. One is that it really is helping us understand who we are, where we come from, tells those stories of the past. It tells stories about people that can no longer talk for themselves in most cases, right? I mean, we're looking at cultures in some cases that are so far in the past that there are no direct voices from those spaces. And so what we are doing with the archaeology is, in that sense, giving voice to the voiceless. But it is really about telling a story about the past. It really is about filling in the gaps of the human story to really help us understand where we came from, the things that we encountered in the past, how humans dealt with those things, and what that can tell us about the future. And so that leads to point two, which is that, man, archaeology is just this incredible database of human behavior. We have all this incredible information of how humans acted, how they responded to certain changes in their environment, in their culture, So we know how people did things, and we can learn from that. There's so much information there that just needs to be looked at, needs to be analyzed, and needs to be kind of considered in light of our modern situation. So a lot of these things that we think are new to the human condition are things that in some form people in the past have encountered. And we know how they responded. We know about their successes. We know about their failures. And there are a lot of things that we can learn from that. And I feel like, it is, again, just this incredible database of human behavior and human interactions and human responses that should inform us. And so I think it's important as archaeologists to keep making not just statements about what happened in the past, but connecting that to what we do today, to say, there are things that we can learn from the past. And it's as cliche as it sounds, the idea that history repeats itself, and that, what we learn from history, what is the past is prologue. All those things are absolutely true. And I think it is important for people to realize that. I think it helps us understand what happened in the past, and it informs what we do currently, and hopefully helps us to plan, what we need to do going forward, because we do see what happened to these ancient cultures. We do see them rise, fall, rise again. And I think that is an important thing for us to continue to look at and to learn from. So I think it's important. I think people should do. I'm not saying everybody should be archaeologists, but it is important and it should be valued. So again, no simple answers with me. Everything is a three-part answer, let's say. So, I will say this. This is not the most exciting, but it's the most meaningful to me, was doing that very first excavation in Mesoamerica. I was in Belize working on a small Maya house. The excavation was about 12 feet by 12 feet, but it was incredible. It was my first experience with Maya archaeology, uncovering the remains of the first plaster floor that was over 1,000 years old, finding broken pottery and stone tools that were part of this residence, which is incredible, right? I mean, that's what got me excited about my archaeology. It's what keeps me going in the field. And so that first excavation will always be probably the most meaningful excavation. But the most spectacular excavation I worked on was also on a Maya site in northwestern Belize, a site called Milpa, where I had the opportunity of working on an elite structure. So it was this large, when we got there, large dirt, grass, and tree-covered mound. By the time we had exposed a good chunk of it, we had discovered the remains of a structure that had walls over 6 foot tall, still preserved, limestone block walls. But the incredible thing was it was all plastered and painted red. So you could walk in through a doorway onto a beautiful, almost pristine red plaster floor into a back room that had this bench that was decorated with plaster and colored plaster attached to the back wall. All the while realizing that this building was over 1,000 years old, and you were probably the first person to walk into it in that sense in 1,000 years. And that just blew my mind. It was spectacular. It was, you didn't know, or I didn't know at that point, that archaeology could feel like that. Because in addition to all the sort of the intellectual stimulation of what we were seeing and what we were encountering, there was that pure sort of physical thrill of stepping onto a floor that was, over 1,000 years old. And you were sweeping it up like it was, your home, and you're sweeping the dust away, the dirt away, and exposing this beautiful, beautiful red plaster floor. It was unbelievable. So that, I think, was the most, and it was a huge building, and all that kind of the glamour of archaeology. So it was spectacular. I loved it. But again, like I said, that first excavation was probably the most meaningful to me because it really just got me hooked on my archaeology. With what I do currently, since I'm not doing field work, I will say that working with our site preservation program is one of the most rewarding things. Because it is incredible to be able to work with communities and projects around the world that are trying to preserve their cultural heritage, and coming up with working with these groups to come up with sort of creative solutions that we can then support is absolutely fantastic. So I mean, I there's no aspect of archaeology that I don't like, and all of this stuff is just exciting and fun, yeah. So, like I said, you don't get all my answers are long to these questions. Yeah, again, two things that I want to sort of make clear. One is that archaeology can be very local. I think when I talk to people about archaeology, they almost always think of Greece and Egypt and the Indus Valley, or if that, usually Greece and Egypt. But I like to, especially in the outreach and the programs that we do, I like to emphasize that idea that archaeology is everywhere. Archaeology is local. Wherever you've had people living, you have archaeology. And I always encourage people to look for local resources. Check out your local historical societies, your local museums, your local libraries. There's always information there about sites that are near you, places that you can go visit, historic homes in your neighborhood. Find local archaeology, support local archaeology. You will learn a lot about your own communities. And it's something that I really, really encourage people to do. You don't always just have to go to big museums or travel abroad to find incredible archaeological sites. And there are some incredible archaeological resources around you that you should reach out to. And the other thing I would say is that archaeology is a finite resource. Sites old sites need a lot of help to stay stable and preserved, and we need to support those actions. And that's the one thing I would also say: archaeological sites will deteriorate and fall apart if they're not taken care of. And so while you get involved in your local archaeology, I would also say that is an important thing to consider: how sites can be protected, and to understand that they are finite and they are irreplaceable. And so we do need to work at that, whether it's as an archaeologist, whether as a local volunteer in your community, whatever. You need to be sort of cognizant of the fact that these are irreplaceable, finite resources, and we should be doing everything we can to protect them. So that's what I would say. There's so much local archaeology, and there's so much, there's so many things that you can do to help your local archaeology and archaeology abroad for sure. But I would start at home.